Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sammy Ketchum, and welcome back to Sammy Ketchum TCG. Alright, today I'm coming at you with another Unified Minds deck profile. This time I'm coming at you with Blacephalon GX, and Reshiram and Charizard GX, better known as reshiblowns. Alright, I got this this deck list and this deck idea from a very good player, Peter Kica. Alright, he's a pretty decent Pokemon player. He's definitely going to Worlds this year. He's made a lot of, great decks, done pretty well, at regionals, things like that. And, I basically got this list off his Twitter channel. I on one of the Facebook posts or one of the groups that I usually visit, I asked the question. I was like, hey, is there a list for this deck? I want to try this deck out. I want to see, what's all the hype about. And then Peter Kicker was like, oh, hey, just check out my Twitter. The deck list is on my Twitter. So I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I checked out this Twitter, and there, I found the deck. And like a couple of days ago, I put the deck together, tried it out, played it against a couple of decks. And I have to say, this deck is really, really good. This deck is really, really good. And it actually scared me. It scared me because it could really defeat some of the best decks. In the right circumstances, it can defeat some of the best decks, which is very, very good. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be basically showing it to you if it was a bad deck. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into this deck list. Oh, I do have a new name for this deck now. So, normally you usually call it reshiblowns or greens, or was it greensblowns? Nah, this deck is Kicablowns. This deck is Kicablowns. Let's get it. Alright. There we go. Alright. We have ourselves 4 copies of Blacephalon GX. The main attacker of the deck, alright? All the attacks on this card can be used. All the attacks on this card are very good. The first attack basically will burn and confuse your opponent for fire energy. Which is not bad in the Unified Minds format because, it's a little harder to get out of special conditions. So, that could really go far, Also, the second attack is basically the bread and butter of this deck. It's the reason why we're playing Blacephalon in the first place. You basically, for 2 energies, it basically does 50 damage times the amount of energy you basically discard to the lost zone. So if you remove 2 energies from your Pokemon, that's 100 damage. If you remove 4, and it doesn't have to be just from him, it could be from your Pokemon on the bench. If you remove 4, that's 200. 6, 300. Which is very, very good. Since this is an Ultra Beast, it could take advantage of Beast Ring, which is basically why this deck is so good. Beast Ring can basically, we'll get into Beast Ring later because we haven't gotten to the card, but Beast Ring basically accelerates the energies onto either Blacephalon or another Blacephalon on the bench or another Ultra Beast on the bench to help you do more damage. In a GX attack, basically you take a prize card, put it in a discard pile. If it's an energy, if it's a fire energy, you can attach it to one of your Pokemon, which is very good. So you basically take a prize. I mean, even though you're discarding it, it's still taking a prize. You're still one prize away from winning the game, which is very good. Have ourselves a 1/2 line of Persian GX. It's in here basically for its ability Catwalk. Once during your turn, if your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can search your deck for any 2 cards and add them to your hand. Any 2 cards. You can go get a Pokemon and a trainer, a Pokemon and a supporter, a Pokemon and an item. You can get Green Search. You can get a Reshizard. You can get a Bucephalon. You could get you can even get Beast Rings. You can get any 2 cards that you want. It is so good when you pull this off after they knocked out your Pokemon. You know, it combos so well with Beast Ring and Lieutenant Surge's strategy and everything else you want to basically get off. You know, this ability is just so good, and that's mainly why it's in here. It's not in here for anything else. Its attacks are okay, but we're not going to use these attacks in here. We've got the attack of Bucephalon and Reshizard in this deck to use. So here we go, Reshizard, or Reshiram and Charizard GX. Basically, just like Bucephalon, all the attacks on this card can be used. You know, the first attack, Outrage, if they damage them, you can basically fire that same damage back plus 30 more. So if they do 180 damage to you, you can sit there, do that damage back plus 30 more. So that's 210. You know, if they do 240 to you, you sit there and you can do 270 back. You know, which is very good. The second attack, 3 fire, 1 colorless, does 230. 230 is a big number, you know, very big number. You could KO things like Zero Aura. You could KO things like Dedenne. You could KO things that are basically under 210. Anything 210 and less you could KO, which is very good. You know, even though you can't use this attack on the next turn, you still got Outrage and you got the GX attack. Speaking of the GX attack, for 3 energy, you do 200 damage. For 3 more energies, which will be 6 energies, you do 300 damage. 300 damage is knocking out basically just about any Tag Team GX. It's knocking out anything. Anything. Also, this also says the effects of the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon basically are null and void. They don't have, you know what I'm saying? They're not affected by this attack, which is very good. It goes through Whimsicott GX. It goes through Whimsicott GX's ability, you know, and this bypasses that. This bypasses something that says, oh, your opponent can attack next turn or something like that. You know, this bypasses things like that, which is very, very good. This is basically a very, very good secondary attacker for this deck. I'm going to explain something else about this later on in the video about Reshizard, so just stay tuned for that. 4 copies of Welder. Welder is the draw power in this deck. You sit there and you attach 2 fire energies from your hand to your Pokemon and draw 3 cards. It's also energy acceleration. So, yeah, you accelerate energy and you draw cards. There's just no other better combo here. You know, this is how you're going to get Cephalon's powered up. Reshiram and Charizard powered up. Other than Beast Rings powering up Cephalons, this basically is going to do it. You know, and this is so good. You can literally attach 3 energies in a turn with just this one card. Well, not 3 energies, but 2 energies, and then your energy for the turn is what I mean. So good. So busted. Alright. 4 copies of Green's Exploration. If you don't have a Pokemon with an ability, you can play this card. Search your deck for two trainers and add them to your hand. 2 of any trainers. They can be supporters, they could be stadiums, they could be items. Any 2 trainer cards. You can search for 2 Beast Rings. You can search for 2 custom catchers. You can search for Cherish Ball. Search for Heat Factory. You could search for another Greens. You could search for a Welder for next turn. This is so good. This is so good, and this is one of the only decks that can basically pull this card off. The only card in here with an ability is your Persian GX, which will basically only play like if we really need it or maybe late game, you know, and by that time we won't need Green's Exploration. So, yeah. 2 copies of Erica's Hospitality. Erica's Hospitality says if you have 4 or less cards in your hand, draw up to the number of Pokemon that your opponents have in play. So if they have 6 Pokemon in play, you can draw 6 extra cards. If they have 5 Pokemon in play, you draw 5 extra cards on top of the 4 you already have, which is very good. Your Pokemon, your opponent, they're going to set up their bench. They're going to get out 5-6 Pokemon plus they're active, and you know, they're going to set up. They're going to have a bench. They're going to get out their field. They get out their field, you can plus off of that, which is very good. There's only a few decks in this format that will not be able to fill their bench, or they won't need to fill their bench, is what I mean to say. So this is very good for most decks. One copy of Lieutenant Surge's Strategy. Lieutenant Surge's Strategy says if you have more prizes than your opponent, you can basically play 3 supporters in one turn, including this card. So you sit there and you have more prizes than your opponent. I'm going to play Lieutenant Surge's Strategy. I can play 2 more supporters this turn. So now I'm going to play Erica's Hospitality, and then I'll play Green Search. That is busted. That is legit busted. And it is very good after they have knocked out your Bucephalon and you go into the Beast Ring turn. Like, okay, I'll play Lieutenant Surge's Strategy. I'll go Green's Exploration. I'll play another supporter. I'll get Beast Rings or whatever. And then I'll play another supporter. I'll play a Welder. Attach 2 more energies. Draw 3 more cards. It is just legit busted. I'm surprised this is not banned. I'm surprised this is not banned yet because it's not abused like it should be abused. But this is a very, very good card, especially for this deck with Beast Rings. Have ourselves 4 copies of Cherish Ball. Use these to find your GXs in the deck. Basically says search your deck for GX Pokemon, add it to your hand. This is Nest Ball for GX Pokemon. Simple as that. It's very good, very fast way of getting out the Pokemon you need. Especially since All the GX Pokemon in this deck are basically basics except for Persian. Four copies of B-String. This is basically your single most greatest acceleration for Blacephalon in this deck. You know, they knock out a Blacephalon, you know, and they're at 4 prizes. 4 or 3 prizes, you go B-String. Search your deck for 2 basic energies and attach them to your Ultra Beast. You know, with Blacephalon, it's basically common knowledge that they would basically get 2 off in 1 turn. You could get 2 off in 1 turn, or you could play 3 or even 4 in 1 turn if you get it off. So yeah, you can sit there and power up your Pokemon, and after you power up your Pokemon, you sit there and use Mind Blown and discard either some or all of your energies to the Lost Zone and hit for a really big number. B-String helps you to do that. It is so good and it's so busted in this deck. I can't say enough about it. 4 copies of Pokegear 3.0. What you do is you look at the top 7 cards of your deck, search for a supporter, add it to your hand. This is basically Energy Lotto for supporters. Self-explanatory, right? It helps you get Green's Exploration, Welder, Tennis Surge Strategy, things like that. Four copies of Custom Catcher. If you play 1, you can sit there and draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. You know, I mean, you can't play this anyway if you have more than 3 cards. Or if you have less than 3 cards, you can play this. You know. Or you could play 2 at the same time and switch out one of your opponent's active Pokemon with one of the ones on their bench. So if you want to bring up one of the Pokemon on the bench, let's say a Dedenne, or let's say Jirachi GX, you want to bring them up to the active, and either you can sit there and, you know, have them strand in the active or KO them or something you want to knock out. You can do that with 2. And you could do it up to, well, not twice in 1 turn, but if you activate 1, you activate 1 in 1 turn, 2 in 1 turn, and then the next turn you can activate another 2. Two copies of Fire Crystal. Basically says you can get 3 fire energies from your discard pile and add them back to your hand. If your Pokemon's been knocked out with energies, you can get them back. After you've used Heat Factory Prism Star, you can get an energy back or 3 energies back if you have energies in your discard pile. If you discard a Giant Furnace, things like that, get them back to your hand. You know, you can set up welders with this. You know, get 3 energies back, play welder, attach 2 of them. You know, draw 3 cards, things like that. 2 copies of Switch. Self-explanatory. Switch out one of your active Pokemon, one of your bench Pokemon. This is very good for getting out of status conditions, which is going to be pretty big this format. You can also use this to switch to another attacker, things like that. So Switch is still very good. 2 copies of Fiery Furnace, not Fiery Furnace, but either Giant Furnace or Giant Girth or Hearth or whatever they call this thing. Oh my god. But what this card does is that you discard a card from your hand and search your deck for 2 energies and add them to your hand. This sets up Welder perfectly. Go get 2 energies with Giant, whatever this is called. Add them to your hand. then you play Welder, attach those 2 energies you just got with this, and then you draw 3 more cards. It's just busted. Originally there was 3 in this deck, but I took one out for a power plant because I feel power plant is just important to have against GX and EX abilities. In the beginning of the game, I just think it's really important. So other than that, that is the only card I changed in this deck. Other than that, this whole list is basically Peter Kickers. So, 1 copy of Heat Factory Prism Star. You discard a fire energy from your hand and draw 3 cards. So this is what I was talking about with Fire Crystal. You discard a fire energy, draw 3 cards. If you get that off 3 times, you have 3 fire energies in your discard pile. Play Fire Crystal, get them back. If this is still out, you do it again. Or you could discard another fire energy for giant furnace or whatever this is called. Things like that. But this is very good. A little bit of draw power for your deck, for fire decks, which is very good. 1 copy of Power Plant. Like I said before, this is the only card that I basically added into this deck because I just feel like shutting off EXs and GXs in the beginning of the game is important. You sit there, you go through your turn, you play greens, you play Welder or whatever, and you top deck this, or you draw into this, or you get this, and you're like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try to deny you the use of your GX abilities. So you're not going to sit there and get off the Dene. You're not going to sit there and get Zero Aura's ability to free retreat your Pokemon if you have an energy. Things like that. So, you deny them a little bit, to keep them on their toes, and they get locked, which I think is very good. And last but not least, we have ourselves 16 fire energies and 1 copy of Beast Energy Prism Star, basically for Blacephalon. It adds 30 damage, and it also can act as any type of energy for Ultra Beast. So, yeah. So, basically it's essentially a fire energy. You really wouldn't want to use it for anything else. But it's any type of energy on an Ultra Beast. But yeah. This deck is very good. Like I said before, I've tested it out a little bit, and I'm going to do some more testing with it throughout the upcoming weeks. But there are a couple of things that I have found that, that people might want to watch out for. Let's say the game's going back and forth. They knock out your first Blacephalon. They've got 4 prizes. You go Beast Ring. You go Beast Ring, Beast Ring. You get your energies on your Pokemon, on your Blacephalons, and you go ham and you knock out their GX or their tag team, and you're off and rolling. All right. The turn after that, your opponent's turn, they come back and they knock out your second Blacephalon. If they knock out your second Blacephalon, your next turn is basically going to be the deciding factor on who wins the game. Because basically at this moment, you're at low prizes, your opponent's at low prizes. They've KO'd your second Blacephalon. You're no longer in the Beast Ring turn anymore, so you don't have Beast Ring to fall back on. So if you didn't use all of your Beast Rings in that one turn, you're kind of like, okay, so how am I going to get powered up again? You know what I'm saying? Um, well, there's one way to do it. A, if you've already if you already have another Pokemon powered up on the bench from a former Beast Ring turn or from a Welder turn, you know, that definitely helps. Um, um, you know, but yeah, I mean that's basically it. It's either you're gonna Welder, or you have them powered up from a former Beast Ring, and then on that following turn you have to basically have enough energy to knock out your opponent's Pokemon. If you don't, then you basically lose because they're going to come back strong and knock out your Pokemon and win the game. This is the deciding turn. You know, one thing that helps with that is Persian GX. Persian GX helps with that. If you have a Meowth down, or if you already have the Persian down and you evolve it and they knock out your Blacephalon, then you can basically capitalize on that. Go get any two cards from your deck and hopefully maybe get a Welder or something to power up your Blacephalon to get more energies in play to knock out your Pokemon. You know, in some games that I've been playing, you know, one game that I played, I had 4 energies on a Blacephalon from a Beast Ring turn. I was able to capitalize on that, evolve into my Persian, get, another energy, maybe greens or whatever, and I was able to basically take the game and knock out a big tag team. You know, another scenario, basically the same type of situation, is I had the Meowth on the bench. I had 2 Blacephalons in play. I had 2 Blacephalons in play. One had an energy on it, and one didn't. My opponent counter-catchered up the one with the energy on it. Not counter-catchered, but custom-catchered up the one with the energy on it and knocked it out. So I only had 1 Blacephalon in play with no energies. So, and then I came back on that last turn, and I was trying to think of what to do. So I sat there, evolve into my Persian, and I'm like, okay, so what do I get? Can I basically capitalize and win the game on this turn? If I can't win the game on this turn, the other deck wins. Because I needed 3 to 4 energies in play, or I needed 2 energies and a Beast Energy Prism Star. And I also needed custom catchers. That was a lot to ask of out of one turn, especially if your opponent sits there and reset stamps you to low prizes or low hand size. If they sit there and reset stamp you, and then you go into your turn, you're like, okay, so I can only work with these 2 cards, and these 2 cards, a Persian, and 1 Blacephalon, and I've got to get enough energies and enough resources to basically take this game right here and now. And I have to say that's one of the things, that's one of the problems, or one of the situations that I came across with this deck. Another thing that can help this out is having a Reshizard on the bench, either with 1 energy or 2 energy, or powered up somewhat. If you have maybe 1 or 2 energies on it, and then you somehow get a Welder. If you get a Welder for like maybe 2 more energies, or whatever, and then you attach your energy for the turn. If you can get off that 230, or if you haven't used your GX attack, get off the GX attack, you can knock out a tag team, and that can basically help you win the game on that turn. But you gotta set it up and have the Reshizard down, and have the right type of setup, the right type of play to set that up. Sometimes it won't always happen because you won't always have the same hands. You know, you may have down a Cephalon GX and maybe the Persian and not the Reshizard. Sometimes you may have the Reshizard down there but not the Cephalon, and you know, or so forth. You know, it just depends on how the game goes. You know, but that's one of the things I found out about this deck. So yeah, I mean, another thing is that there are also decks that can basically avoid getting avoid going into the beast ring turn. One of the decks that does this is Dark Box. Dark Box can skip the beast ring turn. One way that they can do it is with their GX attack. If they sit there and knock out a Cephalon with the GX attack says your opponent can't play any trainers the next turn. So no supporters, no items, no trainers, no nothing. So you can't play Beast Ring. So if they get 5 energies on that thing, knock it out, boom, you can't even go into Beast Ring. You know what I'm saying? It's over. You know. Also, what you can sit there and do is with Mega Sableye and Tyranitar, you can use their big 5 energy attack and hit for 210. If you hit a GX or EX, you can take one more prize. So you could take 3 prizes instead of 2 and possibly skip the Beast Ring turn. So you can sit there. They can sit there, go first, knock out a non-GX Pokemon, maybe like Naganadel or what have you. You know, and then come back on the next turn, set up the Tyranitar, and be like, okay, now I'll knock out your Persephone, and I'll take 3 prizes instead of 2. You don't get to activate Beast Ring. You know, so you know, that's one of the decks I can skip the Beast Ring turn. Pikarom can skip the Beast Ring turn with Tag Bolt. You can sit there and Tag Bolt and knock out 2 GXs. You can knock out a Persephone or a Dedenne or what have you. You know what I'm saying? But it depends on if they have the bench barrier Mew on their bench. If they have Mew on their bench, then Pikarom can't use that attack. And at that point, Pikarom can't use the GX attack to skip Beast Ring. You know what I'm saying? And that was actually one of the things that was a weakness of Persephone, was that Pikarom could basically skip the Beast Ring turn. You know, that was a big thing. You know, but now they can't if decks play Mew. I mean, actually, which this deck doesn't play Mew, which this deck really doesn't need it because most of the Pokemon in here are over 170. So if they sit on the bench, Pikarom can't really knock them out with Tag Bolt with 1 turn. You know, with the exception of a Meowth. You know, but I mean, you're not gonna Meowth. You know, but other than that, it's not really gonna end up bad because you're only gonna end up knocking out the active and not the bench because you're 1 damage over 170. So, I mean that's I think that's my main guess as to why Mew is not in this deck. Because, I mean, you really don't need it, And plus, it's a bench space that you don't want to use and take up, So, but yeah, but other than that, I mean, this deck is very good, and I like it. It's a very good, decent play for Worlds. It's a good, decent play for the Unified Minds format after August 15th. So, that said, we are going to end this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. and take care of yourself and each other. Thank you.